Far too early for it.
Am I okay just to listen?
You're okay, just listen. all mutes, please, apart from Mindy. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and assembled company, wherever you are in this big wide world, and whatever time of day it is, welcome. And if we are connecting the world by stories, we're going transcontinental today. And we're going to start by just pootling. We're going to get on Ali's magic carpet from Marrakesh, and we're going to fly across to Singapore, where Mindy is going to tell us the first story of the session. Mindy, the stage is yours.
Oh, wow. Thank you very, very much, John. And hi, everybody. We're going to take the carpet to India, because this is a story from India. And yeah, so here we go. There is a village in Rajasthan. It's a village, it's called the village of Kejatli, and where there are no trees cut down and no wild animals are killed. This would not have been possible had it not been for a brave Bishnoi woman, a brave Indian woman from that village, whose actions have inspired an environmental movement and have inspired people then in the 1730s and even now to take action for the forests. Amrita Devi. When Amrita Devi was a little girl, she would climb the trees, the kedri trees that stood between her village and the great Indian desert. These kedri trees were resilient trees that could withstand the harshest desert storms. They protected her village from these storms. The leaves could be eaten by goats, camels, and other animals, and its bark could heal a variety of ailments, and its roots kept the soil fertile. To Amrita, these trees were not just trees. They were her family. Her people regarded these trees as sacred, and she vowed to protect them too. Every morning she would go to the forest of kedri trees that were near her village, and she would hug the oldest kedri tree and chant, "Mother of kedri trees, swaying gently in the breeze, we owe our lives to you, for that we must protect you too." When Amrita became a woman, she took her daughters to these kedri trees, and they would sit among their shade, laughing and sharing stories and secrets. And they would all gather at the oldest kedri tree, where they would hug her tightly and chant, "Mother of kedri trees, swaying gently in the breeze, we owe our lives to you, for that we must protect you too." And they would do this every day, every week, chant and sing and enjoy each other's company. But there was one day they went to the forest, and they were looking forward to spending time with each other as usual. They suddenly heard loud noises coming from afar, and Amrita saw men on horseback riding towards them, the forest. She wondered who they were, and she looked closely and she saw them from their uniforms that they were the Maharaja's soldiers. What did they want? Why were they here? And she remembered a rumor that the Maharaja was building a new palace. Were they here to take the people away to build that palace? She wondered. Amrita told her daughters, "Go back to the village. Go back. Tell them that the Maharaja soldiers are coming. Go." "No, Ma. We will not leave you, her elder said. A chill ran down Amrita's spine. Her heart was beating fast. She was terrified, but she knew she couldn't leave. And then she saw the men coming nearer, and she saw the soldier in front pointing at the oldest Kedri tree, and he said, "Start with that one." Her heart sank. She commanded the children, "Go back now, go. Tell the people, the soldiers are here for the trees, go." Now, this time her daughters didn't dare refuse their mother, and they ran back to the village. Amrita quickly rushed to the oldest tree and stood in front of it. She watched as the soldiers got off from their horses and removed the axes from their sheaths and walked towards the tree. She looked at them. "Sahib, is there anything I can get you? Anything for your horses, for your men?" "Get away from the tree, woman. We are here to get the trees." "Sahibji, please, these trees have protected our village. Don't cut them down, please." "Hey, these trees are for the Maharaja. You dare disobey him, huh? You have money to pay us?" Amrita knew there was not enough money. She did not have enough money to appease the greed of these soldiers. But then she heard her people drawing near, and she thought for a moment there was hope. But when she looked back, the other soldiers were brandishing their axes at them, stopping them from coming forward. She heard her children cry, "Mama!" And she suddenly felt a pull. She felt pulled away from the tree, and these soldiers grabbed her and threw her to the ground. They then went up to the tree, holding up their axes, ready to cut into that beloved tree of hers. And she knew, no, this cannot be. No, I cannot allow it. And she rushed up and wrapped her arms around that tree, holding it tightly, praying for a miracle. If a tree is saved at the cost of one's life, it is worth it. The soldiers knew it was either their lives or the life of this mere village woman. And they chopped that tree. They chopped through her head. They chopped through her body. The blood was everywhere. The children screamed at the sight of their mother's lifeless body and severed head. They screamed and they rushed out and hugged her tightly and dearly, and they wrapped their arms around their mother, crying and wailing, and the men rained blow after blow after blow. That Kedri tree was gone. Amrita and her daughters were forever silenced. The soldiers took that wood to burn for the building of that new palace. But the villagers saw what had happened. They spread the news of how Amrita had sacrificed her life for the Kedri trees. They spread the news of how the Maharaja's soldiers had massacred her and her daughters. And with that, Bishnois from near and far gathered at the village of Kejatli, followed in the footsteps of Amrita, wrapped their arms around the trees and suffered the same fate as her when the men came back. 363 Bishnois sacrificed their lives. The very soil of the village of Kejatli was soaked with their blood. It is said that the Maharaja was horrified by the atrocities his men had committed. He apologized to the community and ordered that there would be no more cutting down of kedri trees or any trees, and no more hunting of wild animals from then on. Well, story of Amrita still echoes through the villages of India. Like her, many women around the world continue to stand up against the destruction of our forests. May their stories and continue to be shared and continue to inspire us and generations to come to do what we must to protect our trees and our forests. Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful story, Mindy, and very appropriate because the other week, not long ago, just down the road from David Heathfield, there was the G7 conference. They're still trying to learn the lessons. But great story, great story. And while you're here, Mindy, because I rarely see everyone. I hate to say the Far East because if you live in the Far East, it's not the Far East. We're the Far West. We have the in February. I want to invite people to our festival, the first Marrakesh International Storytelling Festival. You'll have to raise your own. You're welcome to come. You're welcome to tell. Everyone's welcome to come and tell. But if you want, I'm going to put my email in the chat, because if you'd like a letter of invitation that you can use to raise your expenses for your airfare, maybe find some sponsorship for your airfare and accommodation. There's a couple of people here that have got their accommodation sorted, but we had a limited amount, which we've run out of. Actually, we've got three here. But if you'd like to, if you think you're interested in coming, email me. I'll send you a letter of invitation, and then you can go round to every rich person you've ever bumped into in your life and just say, give me some money. I need to go and represent Korea, Singapore, wherever. So I'm going to put my address in the chat now before Mindy disappears. And meanwhile, we'll take the magic carpet to Korea, not too far. We're still on the same side of the world. Quite a long distance if you happen to live there, but globally, not too far. Ansuk, well, let's have a big round of applause for Mindy before we move to Ansuk. Yes. Beautiful, Mindy. What a start to the day. Ansuk, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Mindy, I listened to your story. It's a so powerful story. Every time I listen to the stories, it's so deep emotions in my heart. Thank you so much. One thing before I tell you, I have to confess. Every time you think I am too humble, but not humble. I just introduce our Korean folk tales here in World Storytelling Cafe. Just that first time in English I introduce. So I translate and correct and practice, but practice is not enough. So every time here, when I tell the story, I am really just inside insecure about making mistake. Today, I'm going to tell you a Korean folktale. The title is A False Geomancer. A geomancer is a man who looks for a good place for a graveyard or a house. And they usually carried a compass, a special compass, to find an auspicious place. In Korea and in China, the geomancer we call it 풍수, maybe 彭水 in Chinese, are very popular, and people loved and believed geomancy in old times. So this story about the fourth geomancer. Once in a springtime, the barleys in the field were still green. A poor scholar's family ran out of food. The scholar was smart and good-hearted man reading a lot of Confucius books, but he was not good at making money. He felt so sorry for his wife and children being hungry. Then he heard his distant uncle became a magistrate in a town. So he decided to go to his uncle, ask for some money. His wife agreed, and she sold her last silver ring from her dowry and gave her husband some money for the trip. The poor scholar walked and walked a long way and arrived at his uncle's house. His uncle welcomed this poor nephew and let him stay in a guest room, fed him every meal. The scholar was too proud to ask his uncle for some money. He felt ashamed begging, so he only wished his uncle to know his predicament and save him. But his uncle seemed to be insensitive about him. One day passed, 2 days passed. The scholar was getting anxious and worrying about his family. After 3 days passed, he gave up and he said to his uncle, "Uncle, now I'm leaving. I came here with empty hands and leave with empty
So
hands
cool.
as well."
Oh, keep looking. Daddy can help you.
Hold on. Lillian, can you please mute?
His uncle said, "Wait a minute, I have something for you." Instantly, the scholar expected a bag of money, but his uncle brought a wooden chest and opened it and took out a compass, a geomancer's compass. It was a small round thing in the middle, magnet, just shows the south, and around the magnet, engraved very tiny Chinese letters shows the direction. It looked very old. The scholar was disappointed. He just, oh, this trip was in vain. I only wasted my wife's last resource. Then his uncle said, "When you travel with this compass on your waist belt, you don't have to worry about next meal." And that was all. He put the string of the compass and set off. He walked a long way back with a heavy heart. When he passed the village, already the sun set and dark. He had to find a shelter. He looked for the largest roof-tiled house. And just he was about to knock at the door, front door, a villager passed by and said, "Oh, sir, you can't expect hospitality from that house tonight. The family have a big problem." The scholar was curious. "What's the problem?" "Oh, the landlord's daughter-in-law gave birth to a baby son 7 months after wedding day. So the landlord felt disgraced and enraged. Tomorrow, the landlord is going to kill the mother and baby." The scholar thought, what a ridiculous. It's very ridiculous. A mother and the baby's life is more precious than a man's disgrace. Oh, I can't turn away from this murder case. And he looked down at his compass and he thought, maybe I can use this compass to save those innocent lives. Let's try. And he knocked at the door and called out to a servant, 이리 오너라, come here. A servant came out and looked him up and down and looked at the compass on his belt. He said, go and tell your master a crafty geomancer came to see him on an urgent issue. And the servant went in and told his master. And the master came out with a very polite voice. The old man, the master said, oh, what brought you here, sir? Any business do you have to me? And the scholar said, oh, I'm a geomancer. And while I was passing by your house, I found your house surrounded by a strange flow of energy. And I am sure this is related with your ancestors' tombs. So let me examine the graveyard. The old man, the landlord, believed in geomancy and respected the geomancer's word, especially in this troubled time of his family. He thought, maybe I rely on this geomancer's advice. And he welcomed the scholar and treated him very well. And the next morning, the old man led the scholar to his ancestors' graveyard. And the word about crafty geomancer's, appearance spread overnight in the village. And the villagers all gathered together at the landlord's graveyard. And everybody looked at the scholar. And the scholar took out his compass and put it here and there around the tombs. And he looked over the mountain ridges and looked down the creeks below the graveyard. And he nodded and he sighed. Everybody just waited what he's saying. After a while, the scholar said to the old man, it's very strange, but your father's tomb is located in a mysterious place. If only you have 7 months born baby child, he will bring your family fame and prosperity. Very strange, he said. The old man heard that and his face turned white. He said, what a fool I was. I was almost ruined my family. Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And after that, he changed his attitude totally. And he treated his daughter-in-law and the newborn baby child as treasure. And he treated the scholar very well for a couple of days. And when the scholar was leaving, he gave him a bag of money. So the scholar hurried home. When he arrived home, he worried about his family. Oh, they are now starving. But his wife came out and she said, oh, we ate all. Your uncle sent us a cart of rice and some money. So we could survive. In fact, the daughter-in-law had sent the money and the rice because she felt so grateful to the scholar. And by the wit of the scholar, she and her baby's life was saved. So anyway, with the help of the compass, the scholar's family had no more hunger. Thank you.
Ansuk, that was fantastic. I've never heard a story about a moral compass before. And that's fantastic. That's a beautiful story. Thank you. We're keeping so far this morning. Or this afternoon or whatever time it is where you are. We've saving the trees. We've defended women and their children against man's stupidity, so we've dealt with man's greed and pride. Shelley, where are you? Oh, let's have a round of applause for Ansuk's story before we go any further. And welcome Lillian from Australia. Now because Ali's magic carpet is carbon neutral, we can go around the world without sinking of efficiency and keeping our mileage. So we're going to come across to Europe now, to Switzerland, and to the neutral country of the world. And we have a lot of neutrality here today. To Shelley Verma, it's a pleasure to see you here, Shelley, because you haven't usually been able to make these meetings. But so Shelley, would you like to tell a story?
Yes, I just want to say I'm so excited that I finally made it for this one. And I'm so happy. Ansuk, you said you were so worried about making mistakes, but your sincerity shines through your stories. It was a lovely story. So thank you for the gift of the story that you gave us. Now you would be surprised at my story, John, because you were asking. This story is about something that the prince loves, and so does the pauper. The poets and the bards, they sing its endless praises, from Babur to Queen Victoria, from Amir Khusro to Mirza Ghalib, locking our senses. Keep on guessing with its voluptuousness, divine succulence and juiciness. Mango. When summer comes knocking on the doors of Indian subcontinent, the air becomes sickly sweet with the smell of juicy, ripe mangoes. And as one, you have to abandon all your grace and manners and slurp on its juiciness. The canopy of the tree shades its lover from the scorching heat. Such is the love of the mango and the tree. Mango is the king of the fruits, and it is the fruit for the kings. Now, for this story, we would have to go all the way back into the 16th century, when India was ruled by the great Mughal emperor, Akbar the Great. Now, he lived in a splendid stone palace surrounded by an army of servants and so many riches and treasures that he would need all of his 1,000 elephants to carry them. But his most prized possessions were his 9 jewels, Navratna. You see, Akbar was illiterate, but he liked to surround himself with wise, learned men, artists, philosophers, musicians, advisors, and one of them was Birbal. Birbal means hazar-jawab, quick-witted, with mind as fast as the falcon's flight and wit as sharp as the quill of a porcupine. Now, he advised Akbar on all matters big or small. And when Akbar was away, Birbal would hold his own court as a judge. And people from all across the kingdom, they would journey to, deliberate their case before him. And this man, this Birbal, Raja Birbal, as people called him, he would always find a way to figure out a solution, to settle a dispute. Now, one spring morning, two neighbors, a carpenter and a weaver, they approached Birbal. And, they lived right next to each other and not in a village, not far from the palace. And right in the middle of their home was a mango tree. And so Birbal, he leaned back on his chair, his elbows resting on his knees, holding his chin. He listened as the men told him that the mango tree had recently borne fruit. And there was lots and lots of fruit, more than usual. And the carpenter, he claimed that the harvest was his. And this carpenter was a very cocky, confident fellow. He stood before Birbal and he said, Raja Birbal, I have watered that tree ever since it was a sapling. Those juicy mangoes are mine. And the weaver, he was such a humble fellow. He just folded his hands and he said, Raja Birbal, this carpenter is not right. You see, I planted that tree when my daughter was born, and I have nurtured that tree for the last 20 years. That fruit belongs to me. And Birbal, in his true Birbal style, he leaned forward. He stroked his chin. He closed his eyes deep in thought. He gazed at the two men and he said, yeah, I see you are doing that, John and Baba Singh. And he said, listen, I have listened to your arguments, but I need some more time to deliberate over the matter. So please come back tomorrow morning. And the men were gone. That night, as the whole palace slept, Birbal, he snuck out of his room into the hallways. The full moon was shining through the windows, casting long shadows. You could see Birbal creeping along the corridors, tiptoeing down the stairways. Where? Into the servants' quarters. He let himself in and he rummaged through a drawer full of clothing. And he pulled out a pair of pants, pajamas. And he put on a shirt, kurta. And he put on a cap, a turban. And dressed as a servant, he rushed to the stables and he mounted one of the horses and he tugged at the reins and he galloped off to the village where the two men lived. And he stopped his horse right in front of the two men's houses. And, smack dab in the middle stood the beautiful, majestic mango tree. Its thick green leaves and juicy red fruit shimmering in the moonlight. And Birbal, he just stood there admiring the tree. I see why these two men are fighting over you. And he got off his horse. He walked through the courtyard of the carpenter and he got to the house and he knocked on the door. Tuck, 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 tuck. Carpenter, wake up. The thieves are stealing your mangoes. They are picking them right off the tree. Hurry up, there'll be nothing left. Carpenter. Tuck, 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 tuck. Carpenter. No reply. It was the middle of the night after all. But then soon he heard a grumbling. Who are you? Just go, whoever you are. It's the middle of the night. I'm not going to fight any thieves over a tree. Just go. Let the man have his sleep. And Birbal, he just smiled. And then he rushed to the weaver's house, which was next door. And he did the same thing. Tuck, 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 tuck. Weaver, wake up. The thieves are stealing your mangoes. They are picking them right off the tree. Ha! And even before he could finish the sentence, the door opened and the weaver rushed out with a stick in his hand and his hair was all wild and his eyes were wide and he looked up and down. He blinked. He blinked at the person who was standing in front of him, but he could not recognize that it was Birbal. And he raced towards the mango tree and he circled around the tree, craning his neck on the left, on the right. looking for the thieves who was trying to steal the mangoes. And then he kept on doing it, and then he stopped. And he said, maybe, I think I frightened them away. But what if they come back? I'm going to climb the tree, hide in its branches, and then I'll be ready when they're back. And then he looked at Birbal and he said, Bhaiya, thank you so much. Thank you. You don't know what you have done for me. This tree is like a second child to me. Thank you. And then he scrambled up the tree and he settled on a sturdy limb and he was ready to guard the tree for the whole night. And Birbal, he just bowed. He got off on his horse and he galloped away to the palace. And then he crept back in and he changed out of his servant's garb and he wore his silken pajamas and he lay on his bed smiling. These two men have no idea how much they have helped me tonight. But I still have one more test that I need to put them through. And only one of them could possibly pass. Now, I'm going to pause here in the story. And I'm going to ask you. So what do you think is cooking up in Birbal's mind? Who do you think is the rightful owner of the tree? Does anyone want to say anything?
I think
Yeah.
that he's gonna ask them what happened the night before, and he's gonna see about who tells the truth and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Okay. David,
I think
I see you said Weaver. Yes, yeah, Weaver. Okay, but what else do you think is cooking up in his mind? David, do you want to say something? What do you think he's going to do? What is the test that he's going to put them through?
I wouldn't dare to second guess Birbal. Birbal is far wiser than me.
Well, you are definitely as witty as Birbal.
Only the characters in my stories are as witty as Birbal, but not David. No.
Okay.
Maybe he tries to cut off the tree in some.
Shh. Okay, okay.
sounds like Solomon.
Let's get back to the story, shall we then? Okay, let's find out what happens. So the next morning, the two men, the carpenter and the weaver, they were back at the palace as they were instructed. The carpenter looked extra confident and extra cocky. He was quite sure that he was going to get all the mangoes. And the weaver, he looked tired. He had bags under his eyes and his hair was sprinkled with twigs and leaves. I mean, he'd been up on the tree all night long. And Birbal, in his true Birbal style, he leaned forward, he stroked his chin and he said, listen, I'm sorry. I could not decide who the rightful owner of the tree is. And then before he could say anything, the carpenter, he was like so confused. What? Wasn't it clear that I was the owner of the tree? And the weaver, he was dejected, crestfallen, sad. But Birbal said, wait. I do not want to disappoint you. So I have a proposal. Listen to me. I will send my servants to the village, to your village, and they will pick up all the fruit from the tree. They will count every single piece of fruit and divide it equally between the two of you, right? And then I will send my woodsmen. They will cut down the tree and they will chop it down into firewood. And they will divide the firewood between the two of you. Right? So half of the fruit, half of the firewood. That's my plan. How does it sound? And the carpenter, he clapped his hands. I say, Raja Birbal, that is wonderful. What a fair and just decision. And the weaver was quiet. Not a word. His head was hanging. Birbal said, Weaver, so tell me, what do you think of my plan? You see, half of the fruit, half of the wood. Your neighbor, carpenter here, thinks that it's a fair and just decision. What do you have to say about it? the weaver, he just took a deep breath and he said, Raja Birbal, with all due respect, this is anything but fair. And Birbal, he was still trying to, act innocent. He said, what? Why do you think my decision is not fair and just? Tell me why. And Beaver said, as I told you yesterday, I planted that tree 20 years ago when my daughter was born. As I have watched my daughter grow, I have watched the tree grow. I have watered its roots. I have trimmed its branches. And I have given it all my love and my care. And in return, Raja Birbal, it has provided me and my family shade during the hot summer months, given us fruit, fresh, juicy fruit after a long winter. And Raja Birbal, that music of the songbirds, thanks to the nest that these little birds have built in the crooks of the tree. No, Raja Birbal, how can I watch the tree die, cut down for firewood? Raja Birbal, if you must just give away the tree to the carpenter. I rather just let it be. It's okay. Just give him all the fruit, give him the tree. I don't want to watch it die. And Birbal, not in the true Birbal style, he got up from his chair and he looked at the weaver and he said, well, you don't have to do either of them. You don't have to let your tree go, and you don't have to you don't have to see it die. Because of the love, the affection, the care that you have shown, the hard work, the effort that you have put in the tree. It is more than obvious to the court that the rightful owner of the tree is you. He looked at the carpenter and he said, case dismissed. And the carpenter, he just gritted his teeth and he stomped out of the palace. And the weaver was just grateful. And he even offered half of his harvest to Birbal as a token of appreciation for his wisdom, for his justice. But Birbal refused. Instead, he asked the weaver to donate half of his mango seeds and plant a community orchard right in the palace, near the palace, so that everyone could enjoy its shade during hot summer months, eat its juicy fruit after a long winter, and listen to the sweet music of the songbirds for generations to come. And I'm going to leave you with something that Amir Khusro wrote, and something actually that surprisingly Ariana Grande in 2019 tweeted. And it goes like this. He comes to my town once a year. He fills my mouth with kisses and nectar. I spend all my money on him. Who, girl? Your man? No, a mango. And that's the end of the story. Thank you so much.
Oh, lovely, lovely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shelley, when I listen to you, it's like going to the theatre.
Thank you.
It's just, I can't wait for you to come to Marrakesh, we'll have the Shelley Verma evening, because
I'm so looking forward to coming to Marrakesh and meeting everyone in person and sharing lots of stories. I'm very excited. You have no idea.
Right. Oh, one more huge round of applause for Shelley Verma.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Well, in our carbon neutral carpet, magic carpet, I think anyone who gets up at 3 o'clock in the morning to watch you all actually deserves to tell a story. So besides that, we, not only that, but he's a man getting up at that time of the morning. So we're going to take the magic carpet to Washington, DC, I think Baba C seems to have frozen. Maybe it's the time. Baba C, are you with us? Baba C, Baba C. Okay. He seems to have. Ali, can you keep an eye out to get Baba C back in? He seems to have.
Yes, John. Yes, John. Of course.
Yeah, because I think he's got his internet problems. So we will go. Well, we can change court. I'm getting Ali to do too much. He's got to look at the thing. He's got to drive the magic carpet. He's multitasking in a big way. He's now going back to Singapore to Swee Yan, and a big round of applause. And Swee Yan, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you. I have a very short story, and hopefully Baba C can come back by the time I'm done. All right. I have a very short story, and I used to teach in a secondary school, and I found out that many of my students, they value friendship, and they value friends more than family. And so I ask all teenagers this question, and all of you who are still teenager at heart, this question: are your friends like bees or like flies? Well, let me explain. A mosquito met a fly one day, and he asked the mosquito where he could find fragrant flowers. The fly said, fragrant flowers? I don't know anything about those, but I tell you something better. It's so nearby, you can even hear it. Can you hear that sound? Vroom, bish, vroom, bish. Ah, that's the sound of the rubbish collector. Oh, he's coming to all the houses to collect the rubbish that people throw out into the bins. And very often some would fall off and down into the drain. Come, let me show you. A heap of rubbish here, and the disposable bottles, look, and some remnants of soda pop. Oh, sweet, sour, all kinds. And if you want savory, go down that way, straight down, and then you see a red sign, and that's where you'll find a heap of rubbish in a dirty drain. Well, the mosquito took the directions, and he flew and flew. He got lost. He met Bee, and he asked Bee, where was the heap of rubbish nearby? Bee? Huh? Rubbish? I don't know what that is. But I've seen beautiful, bright, colorful flowers over there. There are the lilies, and over there the pink and red roses, and down there lavender, and many, many types of flowers. Now let me ask you again. Are your friends like bees or like flies?
This short and definitely sweet. Brilliant. Love it. I hope my friends are like bees, but I might just be showing off. It
really depends on how you define it, right? I told this to my my niece, my 15-year-old. She didn't really like it because I think she wanted to define her flies and her bees.
You could, there's two ways of looking at it, isn't there? You know, you could think of the fly as a recycling machine.
Yes.
The use where so you know, the fly is reusing rubbish. So maybe those, you know, it's a weird sort of story, isn't it? Because you could say that those that, you know, that are after the flowers are just looking at stuff on the surface and everything else and going for the glittery
And boring people.
Yeah, it's a wonderful story to tell children because because it's the beginning of a discussion. It's almost like a dilemma story. It's a dilemma story.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
It is.
I've got my first live school with sort of children in the flesh on Monday, but it's too, that story is too old for them. Yeah, but I'm really looking. I haven't been in a classroom for a year and a half. I'm really happy.
I understand that feeling.
But it's only with sort of 5 to 7 year olds, so they wouldn't. I might try with the oldest ones that story if I can. If I may take the story from you.
Yes, please.
Because it's a great story to use in schools. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly why I like it. Because it could be taken at face value, but it also could go into a deep discussion, I feel.
Yeah, we could. Yes. I shall experiment with the next, especially the next high school I get into.
Tell me what their response is.
Right, Lillian, where Bavasi is not back. Do we take the magic? A big round of applause for Sweet and getting us to think. And right. Ali, we're going to, if you can take the magic carpet to Australia now. Coincidentally, Lillian won't know this, but she had the Northern Lights behind her earlier. And Mindy, when she started, who was our first teller on, but she had to leave early, had her Northern Lights background on as well. So,
I thought I better take them off. Maybe that's part of this internet trouble. How you get my messy bookshelf and
you
toilet door.
You can't get much further away from the Northern Lights in Australia.
No.
Yeah, I have a story. I might tell it if I might come in with a story at the end. I might tell a Northern Lights story from the Sami. That I picked up when I was up in Lapland. But right now, can you put your hands together and welcome Lydian Rodriguez Pang from Australia, who hasn't been with us for some months, but it's so good to see you back, Lillian.
Yeah.
And Lillian, I hope you can travel to, I hope everything's good in Australia so you can get to us by February, because I know Lillian was coming to our festival, but it depends on all kinds of travel stuff. But I think by February you should be okay. We hope.
Well, Sydney and the greater region, so we've just entered lockdown again. So things are up and down here, up and down. So
nothing is predictable. No. But if everything works, we will see you. You will be the Australian representative. But Lillian, you are the whole of Australia. Lillian, have you got a story for us?
I have. I actually was tuning in to listen, so I haven't prepared one. So I thought I would leave it up to you wonderful people with what kind of story you want. I'm thinking, I could tell something in English or Spanish, or there is, there's a story I wrote that's with very Australian characters called Damper Man, or there's Donkey and Camel, which is a story about friendship. So, put up a hand for a face. Oh, give me an animal. Let's see what I got. I might not have anything.
I'd love to hear your original story. That's one of your stories. I don't know how everyone else feels.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. Let's think about that then. Well, there's Damper Man is an Australian take on a traditional story. So it's very child friendly. Otherwise, there's Child of the Moon, but I haven't rehearsed that. So let's go with Damper Man. Okay. So in the middle of Australia, the dust is red and the land is dry, so dry. And out in the center, there is this big old fella named Bob. Now, Bob, he's kind of one of these fellas that just is happier on his own, likes a bit of space around him. So he went out into the middle of the desert, set up camp. And that's where he lives. He built himself a little bit of a shack out of some tin and wood, a little bit of a humpy, we call him. And he lives there with his best friend, the fairy wren. Now, the fairy wren makes a nest in his beard, John. So his fairy wren is there with him all the time. Now, old Codger Bob, he stands 6'4" and he stands on one leg alone. He built another one for himself out of wood, of course, so he kind of just hops around. You know, old Codger Bob, why is Bob always a big fella? Because you're going to live in the outback all on your own. You're not going to be too little. So one day, old Codger Bob woke up and he looked out at the horizon and there was nothing, just the way he likes it. He couldn't see people, he couldn't see anyone. It was just perfect. But then he looked a bit closer and there was some dust. And he kept watching this dust and it kept getting closer and closer. A couple of hours later, he could see it was a car. And within an hour, this car pulled all the way up to old Codger Bob's humpy. 2 visitors got out and they stood there and old Codger Bob was like, whoa, what do I do with you? Oh, I know. I'll make you a cup of tea. So he lights up the fire and he puts on the billy, puts it up to boil, and they have a cup of tea. Now, it's not too long before old Codger Bob's a bit bored with this company. He's like, all right then, your cup of tea's gone, you can go now. And the visitor's like, oh, all right. They get into the car and before they leave, they hand him a bag of grapes. Old Codger Bob waves them off and zoom, out they go in a pile of dust. Old Codger Bob looks at these grapes and literally, Santa of Australia, in his hands, he watches them become raisins. It's that dry. He's going, I'll make me some damper. So he does. He gets his flour, salt and water, and he mixes them together in a dough. Then he grabs the raisins and he sticks them in the damper and he kneads that bread. And damper's really specific, okay? So damper's a very Australian bread and it's very simple. And you knead it. You got to be careful about the way your hands move. And then he looks at his bread and he thinks, whoa. He makes a little face out of the raisins, 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth. And he thinks, cool, I got me a damper man. And then he slops a juicy kiss on the damper man. He looks down at his fire and he dampens it down because that's how damper got its name. Dampens down the fire and puts his dough onto the fire into the coals and lets it cook up. And, well, now Bob wasn't even hungry. until he could smell that bread cooking. Who's ever had bread in the oven or been cooking out on an open fire and could smell it? And it doesn't matter if you've just eaten, if you can smell fresh bread cooking, oh, Bob couldn't help himself, but now he's starving. And the damper's rising and rising, and he's waiting and waiting. He's waiting for this thing to cook up, and he's just as it's ready, it's perfectly ready, he reaches into the fire with his bare hands and pulls up the damper, and it's hopping, bopping, hot, and that damper hits the dust. Uh-oh. And out pop 2 arms. Out pop 2 legs. And that damper, well, it just ran. Bob said, hey, I was going to have damper for dinner. That damper looks at old Codger Bob and says, hop, Bob, hop, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the damper man. And the damper man, well, he just ran. Oh, Codger Bob, he's hopping after him. He's hopping for all he's worth. But that damper man, well, he just ran. He ran straight past the humpy, straight past the little bush, and out hot Bandicoot. Now, Bandicoot is an Australian animal. It's got a really long nose. And it was sniffing around and looked up and went, whoa, damper for dinner. Damper man looked at that Bandicoot and said, hey, I ran from old Codger Bob and now I'll run from you. So hop, Bandicoot, hop, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the damper man. And the damper man, well, he just ran. Whoosh. Bandicoot is hopping after Damper Man. And old Codger Bob is hopping after Damper Man. And Damper Man, well, he just whoosh, ran. He ran straight past a patch of grass and out hopped Potteroo. Now, for those people who don't know, kangaroo is pretty famous. But we have so many types of kangaroo, and Potteroo has to be my favourite. Potteroo stands maybe this tall only. It's the cutest little thing. Oh, but Potteroo saw that damper and went, I want damper for dinner. Damper man looked at Potteroo and said, I've run from old Codger Bob, I've run from Bandicoot, and now I'll run from you. So, hop, Potteroo, hop, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the damper man. And the damper man, well, he just ran. And after him went Potteroo. And after him went Bandicoot. And after him went, whoa, oh, Codger Bob and Damper Man. Well, he just ran straight out into the open grasslands. And there was Kangaroo. Kangaroo, I'll have me some damper for dinner. Potteroo went, Damper Man went, I've run from Potteroo. I've run from Bandicoot. I've run from old Codger Bob. Yeah, and now I'll run from you. So hop, kangaroo, hop, as fast as you can. You can't catch me. I'm the damper man. And the damper man, well, he just whoosh, ran. Well, after him is hopping Kangaroo and Potteroo and Bandicoot and the Damper Man and the old Codger Bob and Damper Man. Well, he just ran. He ran as fast as he could. He ran all the way down to, oh no, the river's edge. And he thought, oh, bread, water, oh. And out came crocodile. Yeah. Damper Man said, hey, I've run from old Codger Bob. I've run from, and I've run from, and I will run from you. Hey. Well, Crocodile, he said, hey, slow down, my fast friend. I don't hop. And I'm not chasing you. You ran into me. Oh. Damper Man thought about it. That's right. That's right. You don't hop and you're not chasing me. Hey, can I get a lift across the river? Crocodile said, of course you can. Just hop on my back. Oh, so Damper Man, well, he just hopped on the crocodile's back. He hopped right on up, and Crocodile went sliding into that river. Damper Man was thinking, oh, it's a bit deep. And Crocodile's just swimming across. And when Crocodile got a bit deeper, Damper Man went higher on his back. And Crocodile got deeper. And Damper Man went up onto his shoulder, and Crocodile got deeper and deeper and deeper. Now Damper Man's right up on his head, then right up onto his snout, and Damper Man is going, oh no! And Crocodile went, now I'll have Damper for dinner. He flicked him up. He opened up his mouth. Damper Man's like, ah! And then snap! Crocodile ate Damper for dinner.
Dinner.
Dinner. Echo. And that's the Aussie version of
the gingerbread man. Yeah, no, it's your version. It's beautiful. Well, that was a treat for someone who just came to listen. You know, thank goodness. But you know, we do spontaneity as storytellers. So that's now. Baba C has not only come back, but he's cloned himself and has come back 3 ways. But big round of applause for Lydia and Rodriguez Pang before we go any further. That was fantastic. Now, while we have, I don't know whether we're going to have Baba C version 1, 2, or 3.
Can you hear me?
That's weird because we can hear you obviously through one device and we can see you on another, but that's good. That's good. That is the magic of the internet. So that's fine, Baba C. You stay as you are. It's all working. Don't disturb it.
All right. Yeah, I'm afraid to touch anything. Am I coming in as an echo?
No, you're coming in perfectly.
Okay.
A big round of applause, Baba C. Baba C, the stage is yours.
Okay. I caught the tail end of the last story, and you have to bear with me for a moment because I'm getting the audio from all of the other Baba C's, and I have no idea why they're there. I got kicked off by the techno imps. I want to share a story with you that I was exposed to in 2011. There's a group called RIBS, and it stands for Rhode Island Black Storytellers. And I find their name very interesting because they're a most northern state, but the story I'm going to share has its roots in the South. Now, as storytellers do, we got together on the last night of our tour at one of our hosts, and we ate well and told stories until it was time to go to sleep, far beyond that time. So this is a story about the man who cheated death. Now, as it was the way, in many southern places, children have very unusual names like Junebug, Peaches, Pookie Bean, Pearly May. And word got out that death was coming to this particular neighborhood. Well, people kept their eyes peeled looking out for death. And when they saw death coming, they would send one of the children out the back door to run down and warn the other neighbors. Now, Pookie was a very fast runner. So he ran to the neighbors and warned them. So when death came knocking at the door, nobody answered. So death went on to the next door. Well, Pearly May, she saw death a-coming, so she ran down to the next neighbor and warned him. And when death came knocking, nobody answered. Now, you see, these were the children of the various people in the neighborhood, but there was one guy, and I believe his name was Maynard Ash. He didn't have any family in the community, and no one ran to warn him that death was coming. Well, Maynard had just set up a thing of cold beer and a few shots of whiskey and was settled in to listen to the local baseball game. Now, I must confess, I don't follow sports very much, but in the Washington, Maryland area, Washington, D.C.'s group is called the Nationals, and Baltimore, which is a city about an hour and a half drive away, their baseball team is called the Ravens. And there's a lot of contention between the two teams. Well, Maynard was settling down to watch the baseball game, also called America's favorite sport. Well, he heard a knocking. And he got up, and lo and behold, there was Death. And Death said, are you Maynard Ash? He says, well, who wants to know? Well, I'm Death, and I've come to collect you. Well, you know what, Death? It's mighty hot out there. Why don't you come in for a spell? I was just sitting down to watch some sports. I was watching a baseball game. And before you text me, maybe you like to watch the baseball game. Death said, no one's ever invited me in before. Baseball. Well, I guess I can take a few minutes. So Death came down and Maynard offered him a beer, and Death said, well, I don't usually drink on the job, but look. And Maynard had himself a beer. And they watched the baseball game. Now, when this story was probably first told, it was a black and white set, but I'm going to look on it on color. So they got up, batter, and the picture wound up, and strike one. Batter, and the picture wound up, strike two. And the game went on, and as the game went on, Maynard got up and he got popcorn, hot dogs, pizza, and kept on giving Death another beer. And as soon as Death finished one beer, Maynard put another one in. And then he said, Death, let's do a Boilermaker. And he dropped a shot of whiskey in a mug of beer, and Death chugged that down too. Death was beginning to get a little woozy, and the game was going on, and came to the 7th inning stretch, and Death passed out. When Death passed out, Maynard saw the book that Death was using to tally the names of the souls he was going to collect. So Maynard very carefully took the book, opened it, and sure enough, there was his name. So he scratched out his name, went to the end of the book, and wrote his name at the end of the book. Then he slipped the book back into Death's robe. And just as the Nationals beat the Ravens, the Nationals had to beat the Ravens because, see, I live in Washington, D.C. That's our team. So as the Nationals beat the Raven, Death woke up and said, oh, that was a good nap. And Maynard said, well, Death, I guess I'm ready. He said, no, I got to go get some rest. I'll be back. So Death left, and Maynard was feeling rather good. And as Death walked down the street, he said, you know, that was a very good person. You know what? I'm going to take my time coming back for him. I think I'll start at the end of the book. And that's the story about the man who cheated Death.
I love that twist at the end. Just a big round of applause for Bubba C.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
We've got David. David, unmute yourself. I have a question for you.
Hello.
Hello. Now, we've got time. I'm going to tell a story, but do you want to tell a story?
I could tell a very quick one.
Yeah, well, it would be a shame to have all these people here and not have you tell. We've really gone round the world today, so you can go down to Cornwall. It's not too far for Ali to get back to me after
around the world.
All right then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm in Devon. I'm in Devon, in the southwest of England. And I just want to say, this has been a fantastic session. I loved listening to the stories from everyone who's shared a story. I'm also really excited. Some of you know this, that I'm just about to begin a project called Around the World in 88 Tales. And lots of the people that have offered to or are joining with me in the project are here with us today, including Mindy, who had to leave, but Sui Yen and Baba C and John Rowe and Jackie up there in Scotland and Arn Sook are all going to be joining me. Have I missed anybody? All going to be joining me in the project as we go around the world sharing stories in collaboration with the Royal Albert Memorial Museum in Exeter. So the very first share is on Tuesday. If anybody wants to find out more, get in touch with me. But yeah, the story I want to share is really short. It's a story I learned years ago, and I wish I could remember the name of the man who told me the story. And the man who told me the story is from Iran, and he's a cleric. So I think it's the only story I ever learned from a cleric in Iran. And it's a very short story, and it's a Nasruddin story. Nasruddin went to the mosque. It was a busy day. When he came out of the mosque, Nasruddin started looking on the ground. On the ground there were many shoes that people had left before they went into the mosque, and Nasruddin was searching among the shoes, picking up some, looking at them, throwing others down. I can't find my shoes. Where are my shoes? The people around were concerned. Why can't he find his shoes? Nasruddin was getting more and more impatient. I can't find my shoes. He was even losing his temper. The people around knew Nasruddin, and they worried what he would do. If I can't find my shoes, said Nasruddin, I'll do what my father did. Now he was furious. The people got more and more upset and concerned. A couple of them said, wait, Nasruddin, and they hurried to the bazaar. And there they purchased a pair of very beautifully designed Persian shoes. They returned in a hurry. Nasruddin, will these shoes do instead? Nasruddin took the shoes and inspected them carefully. He sat down and put the shoes onto his feet. They were fine shoes indeed. Nasruddin began to walk away from the mosque towards his home. But the people called after him, Nasruddin, Nasruddin, before you go, tell us, what did your father do? Nasruddin turned and looked over his shoulder. My father went home without any shoes on. So that's thanks to the Persian cleric, the Iranian cleric who shared that story with me many years ago. Back to you. Thank you.
Oh,
I want to borrow that, but I'm going to put an Afrocentric slant on it with your permission, sir.
Of course you may.
Oh, I just love those Sufi stories. Right. Phil, did you want to tell a story, or are you just listening today, or would you like to tell?
I could tell a story if you like, yes.
Well, I think if we've gone to the west of England, we really ought to go from the southwest of England. We ought to go to the northeast of Scotland. It's only fair.
Good morning. I will try my very best to speak in my best English accent and not use my Doric, because I think you would struggle to understand me. This is a story from just over the hill there. I live on a farm that overlooks Stonehaven, which is just south of Aberdeen. And over the hill there is a little area called Durris, which is a right farming community. And beyond that is Bankery, and beyond that is Balmoral, where the Queen has her summer holidays. And this day, a farmer was busy in his field, gathering turnips, neeps as we would call them, to feed the sheep. And he got stuck in with his machine, and he got out with a spade, and he dug in front of the machine. He thought it was a big stone, and lo and behold, he found this massive chest of gold. Well, once he stopped dancing round the bogey and danced about, going, "Oh, I'm rich!" He thought, wait a minute, I've got a little problem here. Everybody knows that if you find gold, it has to go to the crown. And he didn't want that to happen. He wanted to keep it all to himself. But his biggest problem was his wife was a gossip, and she could not keep a secret. So he thought and he thought, and he hid the chest of gold in beside all the turnips, and he went back to the farm, and he left them there, and he thought and he thought and he thought, and in the middle of the night he woke up. And he went downstairs, and he got the chest of gold, and he brought it into the kitchen, and he prized up the hearthstone in front of the fire, and he was going to hide the pot or the chest of gold under the stone. Well, it slipped, and he caught his fingers, and he roared out of him, "Aya, aya, aya, aya," and he woke up his wife, and his wife come down the stairs, and the first thing she saw was the pot of gold. "Oh, we're rich!" And she danced around the kitchen table, up the top of the kitchen table and back down, and it's going, no, you can't tell anybody. You mustn't tell anybody, because we'll have to give it to the Queen, and we can't do that. We've got to keep it. No, you must not. I won't tell anybody. I won't tell anybody. Well, we'll hide it under here just now. And she goes, all right, never tell anybody where it's hidden. No, I won't. And she went back up, and she fell asleep. And he went, oh my goodness. And he lay on the table and his head down, and he got an idea. He jumped out, got dressed, got into the pickup truck, freewheeled it down the hill so he didn't wake his wife up again, and went down to Stonehaven. And he went to the baker's and he bought a dozen rolls. He went to the fish shop and he bought a dozen trout. And he went to the butcher's and he bought a great big 2-pound reel of stringed sausages. And he went home up by the hill above the neat field, and he hung the buns on the tree. He spread the trout out in the grass, and he hung the sausages on the end of his fishing line, and he put it into the river. And he walked back down, and he woke his wife up. Darling, please come on, quick. This is the one day in 100 years when you can go fishing in the forest. And he grabbed her in her nightie. She barely got her slippers on at the back door, and he dragged her up the top of the hill through the neat part. And of course, she walked out of her slippers, and she's going about in her bare feet. And all of us should have said, he goes, what are you doing? This is where we go fishing in the forest. And just with that, she found the trout. And she picked them all up and she's going, oh, look at these, they're beautiful. They're so fresh. And then she found the buns on the tree and the sausages on the fishing line. And they went home and they had the most amazing feast. And the next day, she goes off to deliver all the eggs all round the area. So she was in Bankery, she was in Stonehaven, she was in Turfins, and she was at Lunfarnans, I believe that's where Jackie bides, and arguing about there. And she'd come home. And of course, she had told Abdi that they had found the pot of gold. Well, by the end of the week, it was on the front page of the Merrin's Leader. On the Saturday, it was on the front page of the Press and Journal. And by Sunday, it was on a 15-minute loop on BBC News. And Abdi Kent that had this pot of gold. Well, a few weeks later, they were sitting good, nothing had happened, and there was a chap on the door. And they opened the door, and here is standing Charles and Camilla on their way up to Balmoral to see the Queen. And they said, we believe you found a pot of gold. We've come to collect it, to take it up to Balmoral to give to my mother. Can you hand us over the pot of gold? We haven't got a pot of gold, goes the farmer. Now, you can't deny that. Your wife has told everybody. The whole area knows. It was on the front page of the Merrin's Leader. It was on the front page of the Press and Journal. It's been on and off News 24 forever. The Hail of Scotland came about it. Nicola Sturgeon's even trying to get her to do it. And she's not getting it. And we want it. And he goes, but I don't have a pot of gold. And you can't believe a word that my wife says because she's mad as a hatter. Well, that was it. For him to call her that in front of the Queen, he stamped his feet. Or she stamped her feet, sorry. And she said, I know exactly when we saw that pot of gold. It was a day before we went fishing in the forest. And we went up there and we found the fish in the grass and we found the buns on the trees and we found the sausages on the fishing line. And Charles goes, oh, I'm really sorry. I can see what you mean. Your wife is just mad as a hatter. Oh, well, you've come a long way. Just have a seat and we'll have a cup of tea and a fancy piece before you head off. That's our afternoon tea to the rest of you. As we head off up to Balmoral. And that is the story of fishing in the forest.
Thank you, Phil. It has been an amazing session. Now, at the beginning of the session, Mindy had the Northern Lights behind her. Then later on, Lillian had the Northern Lights behind her. Now, over the years, I suppose I've spent about 18 weeks telling stories up north of the Arctic Circle in Lapland to tourists. And this is a Sami story about the Northern Lights, and it just popped into my head, and I thought, for a change, I'd tell a story on one of these sessions. So, and it's from the very beginning of time. Babasi would go, it's a lot, well, he'd just hold on to that long for about 10 minutes, but we haven't got time for that. So I'll just say it's from the beginning of time. And the sun had a son, and we shall call him Sun Boy. And the moon had a daughter, and we will call her Moon Girl. And she was beautiful. She had silver hair and skin the color of cloudberries. And the sun saw it and thought, my son will marry her. And he went back and he told his son, he said, it's time you got married. I have a wife for you. Now, many may think you don't really want your parents to choose your partner for you, but no, as a Babasi's thinking, I don't want anyone. I don't even trust myself. And but when Sun Boy saw her, oh my goodness, he fell instantly in love. And he took off his golden slippers and he gave them to Moon Girl. And she reached out and she took them. They burned her hands. She threw them back at him and she ran away. I never want to see you again. Well, Sun Boy went back to his dad and said what had happened. And Moon Girl told her mother, and mother said, the sun will be so angry, I have to hide you. And she took her. She took her to a remote island and she put a cotta, a goatee, like a teepee. And she made a blanket for the door and she put Moon Girl in there and she pulled the blanket across so she didn't shine out. And she lived there safely until one day, skipping across the sky with his brothers, came Northern Lights. Now, Northern Lights is a playful fella. He likes a bit of, well, he just likes to play. And he looked down, he saw the goatee, and he thought someone was in there. He sensed there was a woman inside. He said, if you're older than me, you are my mother. If you are the same age as me, you are my sister. If you are younger than me, you will be my wife. Now, you know, sometimes the most appealing voices are probably people you know are a bit of a lovable rogue. Lovable rogues have fantastic voices, and she sort of thought, I know it's a bit of trouble, but come in. Actually, you know, they got on really well, and you know, they lived together as man and wife. Trouble is that the trouble with playful boys is they will go out and play, and so every night he'd go out and play around with his brothers in the sky. But she was wise. So one day when he was out, she took a blanket and she sewed stars into that blanket. And she hung it across on the inside of the goatee of the little teepee thing. And so he came home and he went to sleep. When he woke up, and he looked up and he saw all those stars and he thought he was out already. So he was very happy. He never left home again. And well, he went out occasionally, but you know, I mean, she didn't tie him down or anything, but he certainly didn't go out every night. And they lived happily until one day he just popped out for a second. And it was about that time when the bear was dragging the moon across the sky. And the sun was just rising. Just at that moment where it's still dark, but you can see the sun just there. And Northern Lights had left the blanket just open a touch, and a moonbeam came out of it. The sun went down and he grabbed Moon Girl. Now I have you, he said. Well, Northern Lights came down and battered the sun, and he's fighting for his wife, and the sun throws him off. Moon Girl, Moon Girl is beating him, and the sun just keeps hold of her, and he calls his boy. He says, "Son, meet your wife." The Moon Girl goes, "I hate you. I will never marry you." And the sun banished Moon Girl back to her mother, back to the moon. A Moon Girl and Northern Lights have never been together since. But sometimes, if you look up to the night sky, you'll see the Northern Lights, and you'll see the moon. As Moon Girl and the Northern Lights gazed at each other longingly. And that's a little Sammy story. Well, thank you, everybody. You have been fantastic. Now, if anyone listening actually wants to contribute to the festival, because we are doing our festival on smoke and mirrors. We're setting it up with no funding whatsoever. And some of the riads in Marrakesh, thank you, riads, have donated us rooms. So we were able to offer a number of storytellers rooms there. So the hat, if you're watching on the site, the hat goes to the festival. If you're watching on Facebook, you can see a link to put funds, paypal.me stroke FestiFund 2022 or 2022. There's loads of ways to donate. In fact, most of the stuff that's going to happen on the World Storytelling site, except for Tuesday nights, which is our young people's night, and the money goes to the Hands Up project on Tuesday night. I don't know whether anything ever arrives, but but it's been a fantastic morning for me, afternoon for you, in middle of the night for Babasi. So brilliant. Thank you all for telling your stories. You have been fantastic. Give yourselves a round of applause. If you want to spend a few minutes unmuting and talking to each other, not too long. I have to catch a train at some point. I'm seeing my daughter this afternoon for the first time in a year and a half.
So you're going to catch a train? Wow, you're fast.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Baba. But have a little natter. You rarely see, you know, it's a chance for Australia and Korea and Singapore to talk to each other. How often does that happen?
Well, it's almost time for me to get up. It is. It's almost time for me to get up and have my morning coffee, which I've already had, and get ready for the day. But you know what? I'm going back to bed.
It's almost time for me to go to bed.
For me, for the lunch.
Oh yeah.
No, it's early. It's breakfast time where I am.
Oh, okay.
I think
I don't think the sun's quite come up.
About 1 o'clock in the afternoon with you, Shelley, is it?
It's 12:30.
Close. I was close.
It's
Lillian,
6:30 a.m. where I am.
Lillian, what time is it with you?
20 to 9 p.m.
9 o'clock in the
Whoa.
evening.
Yeah.
And Sue, what time is it with you?
Yeah, it's almost 8 o'clock in the evening.
Well, we will do, I'm going to find my diary so I can say when the next one is, so we know. I had my 2 seconds.
I want to know what's going on with Jackie.
Yeah, well, she's hiding in the middle of her iPad.
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, Jackie. You all right?
Yes, I'm just a bit busy.
That's okay.
Busy is good.
I'm I'm going to do the next one because I'm not at the festival that I'm actually able to do it. I'm going to put the next one, if you want to put it in your diaries, 10 o'clock in the morning UK time, whatever it is where you are, and that will be Saturday the 24th of July. So I love it. I just love these sessions. I mean, it's such, you know, I mean, the voices, there's such a range of voices. Sook, I just can listen to you all day. Shelley, I feel like I'm going to a theatre. Lillian, you know, I mean, I'm just out there in the, you know, I was just there with Big Bob. And you've got such a, I mean, Lillian, you've got such a range of cultures that you tell stories from. And it's the first time I've heard you go Aussie.
Well, actually, I never told a really Aussie story until I was invited to Singapore for the festival. And I went, oh, they expect me to be Australian.
Hey, Lily.
So I had to start developing it.
It's very interesting that you told an Australian story. I worked with a cultural group called Kids and Culture Camp. And this year they were studying Australia and Aborigines. And I had to learn Aboriginal stories to share with the youngsters. So when I heard you doing that, because I did come in while you were doing the story, I was elated.
Well, there's
in fact, if I can find that story, I hope you don't mind if I borrow it.
Go for your life. I wrote it, so you can take it, you can tell it. The animals are all Australian, unique to Australia,
Yes.
so go for your life on that one. In terms of Aboriginal stories, there are some brilliant stories that are published by Aboriginal tellers with specific permission. It's a real thing here to gain permission from the tellers itself. So the Australian Museum has some amazing stuff online. There is a channel called NITV. So that's the Native or the First Nations television. They have a lot of information or stories and promote storytellers that are telling from the culture with permissions as well. So that's pretty beautiful to tap into. Yeah, so there's some beautiful, beautiful stuff.
I just put my email address in the chat. So if you could send me that information, I would appreciate it. And if you don't see it there, you can just Google Baba C, storyteller. A lot of good stuff will pop up. If it's not good stuff, it's not me.
All right. Yeah, I will send you a couple of those little bits and pieces. But otherwise, you know, there are some incredible humans out there doing amazing storytelling and releasing short films, and people you can watch for in terms of First Nations voices telling for themselves.
It's interesting. One of the names that we call Native Americans / Indians in this country is First Nations or the First People.
Yeah. So my cultural heritage is from El Salvador, so Pipil Indian. So have a little bit of a mix through the North Americas. My parents came here in the 70s. So yeah, my mum left North America to come here. So it's part of our little journeys that the world takes.
Lillian, if you want to drag along a few more Australian tellers onto these sessions, you know, so you're not the only Australian representative, that'd be magnificent. Asia has done really well. We always do fantastically from Korea and Singapore, and we usually get a few more from India, but Shelley has come there via Switzerland. But it's but we'd love more Australian tellers on this one if you can persuade a few to come to us.
I'll try.
Yeah, well, it's that you fill the space anyway. You encompass it all.
Is anyone in contact with any storytellers in other parts of Southeast Asia, for example, around Thailand or Myanmar or Laos or Vietnam, or
Oh, we
contacts out there?
Yeah, brilliant. Well,
send me an email, and I do, but also in Australia from those cultures as well. So maybe they have more. But yeah, get in touch with me, and I'll send off what I can.
Thank you.
Fantastic, and thank you, Ali, for running the magic carpet, for driving the magic carpet for us.
Thanks, Ali.
Right.
Thank
Well,
you.
bye-bye,
What
everyone.
John
Thank
said.
you. Thank you so much. Wonderful.
See you all on the 24th. Bring your
Right.
friends. We could have a program that goes on for hours.
And we have.
Okay, bye-bye,
Until the
everyone.
next time.
Thank
To
you.
be continued.
Thank you. Bye.
Later, Ali. This is so weird. I'm seeing myself on 3 different screens. It's weird. 4 screens. All right, that's it. I'm going to breakfast.
Just go away, Bubba. We there's
I'm like a
so much.
boomerang.
There's so much, Bubba, we can take.
But I'm like a boomerang. I always come back. All right, good folk. Thank you, Ali. See out.
Thank you, Baba. Thank you, John. Thank you, Lilia.